Isn't it great that BMW decided to take a handsome car like the 4 Series GranCoupe, get rid of the combustion car components of it, and replace it with their top-end electrical setup taken straight out of that iX and the new i7, and created a car that is pretty normal looking, but does everything that the top EVs today do as well, with almost no trade-off and no specialist platform. That's pretty damn impressive. Now, the car we have today is a lovely Brooklyn Grey, and I want to get this right, BMW i4 eDrive40 M Sport, okay? And it also comes with the M Sport Pro package here in the UK that gives you all the hardware goodies from the higher up M50. But don't worry, I'll tell you what powers both this eDrive40 and the M50, so we'll go through all of the internals and show you how both of these cars work. And then we're going to take it for a drive and see, do BMW deliver good on this idea of still being the ultimate driving machine? After all those former attempts, is this now the electric BMW that we've been waiting for? Let's find out today as we check out the brand new BMW i4. So guys, when I bring sponsors on the channel, I always try to curate them so they're really useful to you guys and to myself. And today's sponsor is going to make your life so much easier when it comes to passwords and your personal details, and it is NordPass. There's so much you can do with NordPass. Mainly it's storing all of your passwords, personal information, credit cards, Wi-Fi passwords, whatever you want, in a secure single account with one master passcode. And it's also a zero knowledge system, so not even the Nord team can unencrypt your data, so it's really safe. This makes things super easy for logging into different websites, for signing up at something like Amazon and checking out really quickly. Even stuff like sharing your Wi-Fi or your Netflix password, which is such a common thing that we all do, it can be done so quickly thanks to NordPass, and it's all integrated across 6 devices that you own. And of course, one of the main benefits is protecting your data, because a password manager is much more secure than just winging it online. So of course, being RBR viewers, I've got an exclusive deal for you guys, plus 1 month free. All you need to do is go to nordpass.com/RBR or use the code RBR when you're checking out. Guys, support our sponsors, and a huge thanks to NordPass for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the car. Look, I'm with you guys. We're all sick of spaceship looking EVs, right? It's hard enough moving away from combustion and all that emotion and gearboxes and stuff to an electric car, then have to be alienated with something that looks like the bloody iX. So even though BMW previewed our i4 with the i4 concept, which was just as zany looking as the iX was, thankfully our final car is much more welcoming, because it's essentially just a 4 Series GranCoupe that is electrified. So thank you BMW, first of all, for doing that. And while it is welcoming, the name bugs me, okay? BMW i4 eDrive40 M Sport GranCoupe. Why couldn't it have just been BMW i440? Right? No? Easier? Is it just me? I mean, imagine you're trying to explain to your friend what your cool new BMW car is called, and you have to go through a stupid conversation. Bruv, swear down, I love your new car. Is that like the new M4 or something, bruv? Like, what is it? Tell me, bruv. Well, you see, actually, this is called the BMW i4 eDrive40 M Sport GranCoupe with the M Sport Pro package, and he's gone. Good grief. Now, how do you actually go about electrifying the 4 Series? Now, what BMW did, instead of using the very clever mix of materials with aluminium space frame and carbon cage like you saw in the iX, instead we are using the same body in white as the standard 4 Series. So it sits on that Klar platform that the 2 now, the 3 and the 4 all use. So obviously this platform is quite heavily modifiable. The trade-off is that everything together means that the weight might be a little bit higher than if it was using that mixed material, but it's quite similar in fact to Taycan, so the trade-off is not that bad. Now, just because this is sharing its spaces with the combustion car doesn't mean that somehow the EV element is compromised or old. It's so far from the truth. Instead, this uses the most up-to-date technology as seen in iX, i7 and all the future cars. It's BMW's 5th generation electrical unit that combines our electric motor, power electronics and transmission all into one compact unit that A saves weight and B gives better power output. So that's a great start. Then the actual electric motor, unlike say Taycan and EQ cars from Mercedes that use permanently synchronous electric motors, these use electrically excited motors that don't need rare earths or magnets, and BMW say that they have a better power output as well. So again, different to the others, but just as powerful, if not more. After this, all of this goes to that single speed transmission that's housed within that electrical unit that we already mentioned. And both of our cars, both the 40 and the M50, share the 83.9 kilowatt battery. Now the benefit of this is that the center of gravity is actually quite a bit lower than on the 3 and the 4 Series, so it's somewhat negating that extra weight. Not completely, but it's a good position to be in. Now let's talk about our car today and the power behind it. As I said, this is the i4 eDrive40 in M Sport version. Now, this is pure rear wheel drive, okay? That means immediately it's lighter than our xDrive M50 version, okay, by quite some margin, about 150 kgs lighter without having the extra hardware in the front. This, from just the single rear electric motor, produces 340 brake horsepower, 430 Newton meters, okay, 5.5 seconds 0 to 60, and a WLTP range of 365 miles. I've seen that, a little bit less than that, but I'll go into that later. So this is a pretty decently powerful sedan. Is it going to feel slow though at over 2 tons, you know? So that weight adds up to 2122 kg, which is about the same as the Taycan rear wheel drive. Then we have our top of the line version currently, which is the M50. This has an additional motor, as I said, on the front with an additional 255 brake horsepower, slightly less powerful on the rear at about 308, in total producing 544 bhp, 795 Newton meters, a claimed 0 to 60 on overboost launch control of 3.7 seconds, and WLTP range of 318, which I think is going to be way less than that in this car. That all goes to your usual fully variable xDrive system, which is going to be rear biased, but of course heavier car. Now there is a bit more struts and stuff we'll talk about later, but it's a heavier car. It's 2.27 tons, okay, about 150 kg more than our eDrive40. So that's quite a porky car. Now that 544 brake horsepower figure, although impressive, is what you actually get on the overboost or sport boost mode that they call within sport mode. So it's temporary. The actual figure is about 478 bhp, something like that. So you have to bear that in mind when looking at the figures and the weight of the M50. Anyway, let's move on to suspension, chassis, really important stuff. There are stuff that's carried over from 3 and 4 Series, like the double wishbone front, 5-link multi-rear suspension. But in the i4, we have additional, or rather actually unique struts and braces, and an aluminium shear panel and the front subframe all being mounted to the carrier of the battery to help with rigidity. The M50 gets one single additional brace between our front suspension as well to help a bit with the pointiness and the rigidity on that car. So quite a bit of unique stuff in order to help the i4 be a bit more dynamic. In terms of the suspension, all cars come standard with steel springs on the front, but air suspension on the rear, so BMW really taking the luxury thing seriously on this car. From everything I've read, it's meant to be a brilliant daily car in that regard. Both the M50 and our car today come with the adaptive M suspension, which is a stage higher of adaptive. And this comes with this car in that M Sport Pro package that also gives you the variable steering from M and the M Sport brakes. So again, something well worth getting if you want to keep up with the M50 in every way that you can with the i4. We also have integrated braking, or IB, as we first saw introduced in the M3. This is going to help with pedal feel, particularly in electric cars, and then recuperation. So it recuperates up to 195 kilowatts, which is very impressive, and hopefully we'll see later if the pedal feel is as good as BMW claim it is. Right guys, now let's get on to design, right, because I think it's so important with this car. I find it amazing that a company like BMW can make something like this and then something more normal like this. It just blows my mind. I mean, I call this normal, but is that front, I feel like I'm used to it now. Are we used to it? It's certainly more normal than that thing, but then it's not as normal as like the handsome 2 Series. BMW have 3 stages of looks here now, I think. Really handsome, somewhat but ugly, and totally batshit flipping crazy. But I actually like this. I like the front end of the 4 and the M3, etc. I've said that before. So this does not bother me. The front, I've always said, it looks like a charging port anyway, right? So with this, it works more than anything. So the front panel on here, instead it houses intelligent electronics, cameras, radar sensors, etc., rather than being some kind of open air vent. There are some interesting cuts in there as well, you know, to give it a bit more flavor than just being plain. The rest is pretty much, I mean, you know what, the whole car, if you just put a 440i here, you can tell the difference. I've seen a few and I thought, oh, is that the i4? And it wasn't, it was the 440i, and vice versa. Because as we said, the great thing about this car is that it just looks like a bloody BMW. It's not trying to shout about being an EV. So I love that element. So front apron, exactly like you find in M Sport 4 Series. The wheels, pretty nice. I prefer the 20 inches, of course you would. I think they look a little bit better, but these are nice as well. Behind that, the M Sport brakes. I love the side of this car because I love the door handles that they use in the 4 Series and now in the 2. These are lovely, okay? They're just really nice. They're easy to hold. They're still aerodynamic and flush, but they look modern and clean. So I like that element. The rear's pretty good. You know, I think it's got probably a much better rear diffuser than the Taycan sedan does, because it's broken up a lot more. It's not trying to do fake exhaust or anything like that, or something else silly. It's just an aggressive rear diffuser with a lot of contrast. You know, the lights, they're okay, they're nice, they're BMW coupe. Overall, the thing that just pleases me the most is it just looks like a normal 4 Series. This is a great thing. I don't feel alienated. It feels like a cool, stealthy electric sports sedan. The easiest way to tell them apart are the blue circles that are around some badges and stuff, but that's pretty much it. They've done a lot worse in the past when it comes to blue, as have other brands, so I will forgive that. I think it's a good looking car. You can also get the M Performance parts from launch with this as well. That comes with a lower front splitter, slightly different finish wheels. You get a really aggressive rear diffuser, a massive rear spoiler, and a few other bits and mirrors, etc. So you can pimp up your i4 if you want with M Performance parts as well. In the future, I wonder, would they do like an M60 because the iX has it? If they do, I hope it's not like the iX M60 that just has no change in design at all. I hope that they do a proper M version. Wouldn't that be cool? Like one that actually uses the front end of the M4 and the M3, or something similar to it in an EV form, and they actually took it seriously on dynamics. That would be a very, very exciting car in my opinion. I hope they do that. So guys, now, the other thing that's familiar and nice about the i4 is in fact the interior. It might be my favorite EV interior, and I really want to break down why that is, so come and join me inside. You get the world's longest animation, intro animation on the screens in front, but it's actually quite nicely animated, so I like that. Now as for the rest of the interior, when this car first came out, it was like a big difference to your standard 4 and 3 Series, but today reviewing it, as I'm sitting here, we know that this is the exact same interior as the 3 Series and probably 4 Series LCI or facelift. So just like the outside, which is very familiar and normal 3, 4 Series, etc., the inside is the same thing. It's basically our facelift LCI interior. And what that means is we get the absolute latest BMW live cockpit with the same screen that you found in the iX that we recently reviewed. So you have the massive double widescreen here, as you find in every latest BMW, like I said, like the i7, like the iX, etc. It's a good legible screen, but the other difference is, compared to the 4 and the 3, is that they've lost like all the climate control buttons, so all of that is within the system, all the seat heating buttons, all of that's in the system, all your shortcuts, the 1 to 9 that the old BMW fans love to put their little shortcuts in, those are all gone. It's really minimized here. You've only got like your air blowers for your windscreens front and rear, and then volume controls and the hazard button. That is it. So no other buttons there. What is great though is that they maintained the familiar drive unit with the nice little gear shifter where it should be, which is fantastic, because I hate the fact in the majority of EVs they just get rid of that and they get rid of the actual toggle to play around with the screen, which again is so safe rather than doing this bullshit while you're driving. To be able to use this and have the option, I should say, of using this, because sometimes that's better and sometimes using this is much safer. So it's great, you've got that, you've got your media, home, all the buttons there. You've got your drive unit, as I said, and the gear stick where it should be in a car rather than here or some stupid button somewhere, and your start stop. There are a few blue details here and they're telling you that this is an iCar, which even that I think is unnecessary now in this day and age, but hey ho. So that's great to have. You've got your driving select modes down here as well, your parking brake, etc, etc. So steering wheel, familiar from every other M car. Like I've said in the past, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's exactly the same as you find in the other cars, rather than being the zany square-shaped one that we had in the iX. So all very familiar, all good stuff. But now let's talk about this system a little bit, because I loved it in the iX, and I've lived with it a little bit more in this, and I think I love it a little less now that I've had a bit more time with it. First of all, with this particular one in this car, it just lags. I didn't experience that in the iX. In the iX, I'd press a button, I'd go into a, for example, EV menu with charging or something, and the options would come up almost immediately. Sometimes it works in this car. Sometimes I'm sitting there waiting 2 or 3 seconds for it to, do something, which is strange for the, the latest operating system. I'm going to chalk that up to this being just this car, because as I said, in the iX it was fine. That was the same operating system, that was the same car. Maybe this just needs a firmware update. Apart from that, the actual system of the home screen is very logical BMW. It's an evolution of what we knew in the past. So you have your main home screen where you can set up all the widgets you want. You can add further widgets like I'm doing here. You've got your maps, your My BMW, weather, etc, etc, all accessible exactly how you want it in the main screen here. Then you can go on menu on the side, and you've got all apps, which shows you every single app that the car has, including pulling apps out of CarPlay, for example, and listing them in here, which I've never seen before. Or to reduce that clutter, you can tap vehicle apps on the side, which I'm so thankful for, because I was having a nightmare trying to find out where the basic functions of the car is, because there were just too many app icons. Driving settings, I wish they had a button here like they have in the M cars to get to driving settings, because you have to dive through the system to find it, and then you get to like drivetrain and all these other bits and pieces. Iconic sounds, which you can turn on and off. Iconic sounds is the electric sound of the car while you're driving. You have different sounds in comfort, different sounds in sport. What's great is when you turn the car on, there's an EV turn on sound and a turn off sound as well, which is great, and I think every EV needs to have it. Things like the Taycan, etc. don't, but it's so important. I think it's A, it's safe, so you know when the car is on and off, and B, it's a nice emotional connection to the car. So that's good. Iconic Sounds was the soundtrack made by Hans Zimmer, of Batman Begins, Dark Knight, Inception fame, etc. So we'll see what that's like when we're driving. And then within there you can configure your Sport and Eco Pro individual modes as well. Not a massive amount of options though, because this is just an eDrive40. Driver zone in front, actually really good. So like in the iX, BMW has given us lots of choice now in terms of the different screens. So we have comfort to begin with, and it changes the theme on your entire system. Okay, it's kind of like this sandy kind of theme going on. Then you can go into Eco Pro, which is predictably green, turquoise, etc. And then Sport, where everything goes red and blue and purple, which is all kind of M themed, which is cool. But it goes beyond that. So within comfort, for example, you can choose different styles of the screen in front. So you have like an L-shaped one, you have a slightly larger power meter, or a reduced one, which is a bit more sporty, and then you can choose the content that you see within it as well. And it's really easy to choose the content for the heads-up display above there as well. So they've really simplified all of that happening here from the steering wheel controls, which is great. In sport mode, you get a choice of content as well, and this was something we didn't have before. We only had, you can just have the maps in front, and that's it. That's not the case anymore, so you can actually customize stuff. So I like that. That's actually really, really good. What's great when you put CarPlay in, it's a massive full screen experience here. So that looks really good. One thing I hope manufacturers start doing is start using the ability CarPlay has to have a second screen, for example, to show Google Maps, etc. on your driving zone, which nobody does at the moment. Not that I'm aware of anyway, which I find annoying. But it's nice to have, full use of that screen there. So that's good as well. Right, some things that I love and hate about the i4 interior. First of all, what I hate and despise is the personal assistant. It is rubbish. Watch this. Hey BMW, turn on the heated seats.
The seat heating for the driver is already set to level 0.
Now what the hell is that supposed to mean? I asked you to turn it on, not to tell me that it's already off. In a Mercedes you could say my bum is hot and it would turn on the seat ventilation. This can't even understand a simple instruction like turn on the heated seats. So you need to know specific commands. Clearly it's just not intelligent enough. And annoyingly, that command for me is really important because there's no heated seat button, which is infuriating. So you have to go into the system to kind of turn it on, and I'd much rather tell it to do it, but it can't understand something really quite simple. Then what I really do like is this live view that we have of the car here. Now watch what happens when I do the indicators. High beams as well. So it literally is a live view of the car. If I open the door here, you will see as well, the door now comes up as open on the driver's side. And then if I get our boot open as well, you will see here as well, the boot is open, driver door open, and our hazards on. That is literally a live view, and I'm actually really quite impressed with that. Storage wise, you've got your usual storage here, USB-C, 2 cup holders in the front with the USB-A, so a choice of both, your car charging mat in there as well. Speaking of charging then, we've got a full car here with a range showing of 320 miles. So you know the WLTP, as I said, 365 it was, 320. It's the typical drop-off versus WLTP figures. And that's pretty damn decent, you know, for a car that was a combustion car, body in white, to have all the EV stuff chucked into it and to still give that. That's brilliant. That's like 100 miles more than my Taycan Cross Turismo. Now, of course, this is, you know, the less powerful car, so the M50 is probably more similar to the Taycan, and that's a fairer comparison. But this is the range version, you know, and when you want that 300-mile range, the eDrive40 gives it. And the only way this is going to work, like I always say with EVs, if you have a home charger, like I have my CTEC one here, then you'll have no anxiety at all. Otherwise, if you're relying on public charging networks at the moment, even with Tesla opening up to non-Teslas in the UK, you're still going to struggle, and it's going to be a bit of a pain. So yeah, get a charger at home if you can. Seats are nice, nothing zany, no IX lounge chairs or something silly like that, just like you find in the M440. And in the rear, we've got decent space, just like the GranCoupe has as well. So, like I said, pretty much identical to your normal 4 Series. The boot maintains the hatchback space of the standard 4 Series as well. So you've got the lovely hatchback, nice and accessible, lots of space in there. It's a good amount of luggage space, again, for an EV, and it's not really, you know, lost the usual amount that you would expect, especially from a platform that was a combustion car platform. So again, a really good job there. So that's it. It's just a 4 Series interior, and I hate this trim here. I mean, this is just awful, like I found in the 2 Series as well. We don't need silly trims with ridiculous patterns on them. Just give us, dare I say, even piano black, or like whatever this colour is without the stupid pattern on it would have been fine. So I really like this interior because it's just standard, you know, 4 Series LCI probably interior. Okay, it doesn't seek to rewrite the rule book like the iX was doing, etc. It's just, it's familiar. It's like a, you know, an old friend of yours. So I like that. Now let's take it for a drive. Let's see what this is like as a mile cruncher, as a slightly sportier sedan. How does the eDrive40 do? Let's find out together. So immediately you can hear the Hans Zimmer soundtrack playing even as we start off the drive in comfort mode. And it's such an important thing, I think, in any EV that the option should be there. I read a lot of reviewers, particularly in the UK, saying that they don't like it at all and their teams don't like it. For me, it's just safer than like turning it off and having the silence, but because at least you get some feedback of, you know, what the car is doing. Yes, it's not hitting crescendo like a combustion car does when you reach the higher speeds, but regardless of that, you're getting some type of actual feedback, which is so important. Right, so I like that. I like the electric sound. That's a really good start. Now we're not going to start in comfort mode. We're going to go straight into sport. And then you can see that changes the electric sound immediately. It becomes more vicious. I mean, the first thing BMW have done right is to have a difference between comfort acceleration, which is that, and then have your sport acceleration, which is that much more vicious. That's really important because it's, you know, you don't have it in cars like Taycan, which introduced, you know, electric sound to the mainstream. And I think Hans Zimmer's done a nice job here. I don't know what the other reviewers are complaining about. Maybe they just don't like electric sound generally. But for me, it's certainly, the acceleration is nice. It hasn't quite got the deceleration sound that the Taycan does so well. And I think the Taycan sounds and feels a bit more natural, but like I said, I'd rather have it than not have it, because the novelty of, you know, getting some nice sound on acceleration is something that, you know, us petrol or battery heads really do expect now, I think, because you want that emotional connection when you're driving a bit more dynamically. In terms of speed, this feels EV quick. I know the horsepower figure at 340, not super impressive, is it? But as you get going, it gets to scary speeds very, very quickly, and it feels properly nippy. And of course, the great thing about a EV, unlike say an equivalent combustion car with 340 brake, is that the engine is as responsive as the top level one. It's not like you suddenly got an engine that is not as highly developed as, you know, your 440i, etc., or your M3, M4. No, the electric motors, etc., it's all the same tech. It's just how it's delivering the power, and rather how much power it's delivering or how many motors it has, that is the differentiator. What you don't have is suddenly, you know, lagginess. It's as responsive as the M50 would be. So speed is great. The other thing I love is steering, actually. Rear-wheel drive BMWs have good steering, and this car, particularly with the M Sport Pro Pack with the variable ratio steering, and of course we'll get onto the adaptive M dampers later, but the steering is nice. Like, it's pointing nicely, I'm getting good feedback. I bet you any money, even though that the M50 has that extra brace across the front suspension, I bet you the steering is numb compared to this. I bet you any money, because I know what X-Drive BMWs are like, other than the M3 X-Drive. They all have numb steering. Now, speed from standstill is, you know, it's less impressive because this is a less powerful car. It's not geared up for like that sport boost that the M50 has. So you try at launch, and it's okay. I don't even need to measure it. I can tell that it is 5.5 seconds. We haven't even reached 60 yet. There you go. But that's not when the speed is impressive or usable. It's when you're on the run, you need to make maneuvers, you want that extra kick of speed, and it's immediately there. So don't expect yourself to be winning any drag races in this, but when you're doing like normal speeds now and you need a burst of speed, you'll get a shit ton of speed very quickly. All of that torque available immediately, all of the horsepower is there. And you know, it's not feeling any heavier to me, well, a little bit, you know, versus 440i, but the type of driving you'll be doing in this, you know, it's handling its weight really, really quite admirably. So actually driving fast in this, A, with the Hans Zimmer soundtrack, which makes it fun, and B, with the fact that you've got, you know, decent steering with good feedback, you've got a really responsive 5th generation electric unit, and a car that honestly doesn't feel as weighty as it should. I think what M have done specifically with the M dampers, giving you that extra breadth of ability on the sporty side, and just generally I think the rigidity of this car in the i4 in general is really quite impressive. And of course you've got the low center of gravity, the extra rigidity that's unique to i4 that we spoke about, all of that helping make this not feel the weight that it is. I think handling wise, in terms of feeling the weight, it's really up there with Taycan. For me, I think Taycan is still much sportier, but I think this is the only car that I've driven that's come close to that, you know, experience of a really sporty sedan. And unlike something that's still really good, like the Polestar, this actually gives you that emotional connection. I think it's dynamically better. This is a good sports saloon. The IB, or integrated braking system, is also really good. Really good pedal feel on the brake. Feels really natural. So yeah, you will enjoy driving fast in this. And then when it comes to slowing things down and going either into comfort or Eco Pro, which is a mode that really gives you that mileage figure that you quoted at the start of the drive, right? And when it comes to the suspension is absolutely brilliant, okay? Be that in the sport mode that we were just in, or in this comfort mode. It handles the bumps so well. This is a fantastic mile cruncher. And this is what I was saying about the C-Class. A lot of you were annoyed with me that I was being too picky about the suspension in the new C, saying that it needed to have adaptive. But when you're paying north of 50k on cars like these, then you need to have that level of comfort, and BMW have given that in the i4, and I think it's so, so important. For us in the UK, this is now a standard feature. Yes, the adaptive M suspension is a level higher, which gives us really good breadth of ability here, but even in the standard one, you're going to be very, very happy. The other thing you can do is shift the car to the left and it goes into B. This is your one pedal driving mode, and I was using it in the city in London. Very, very useful. You never need to touch the brake at all, other than in emergency situations, and the car will simply brake for you itself, and it's actually becomes quite intuitive, particularly in those type of situations when you're in traffic, but I prefer to just drive myself. This car also has semi-automated driving as well, so on the motorway you can stick it on here with the steering wheel button and it will essentially drive itself. You get the usual indicators such as the lights in the steering wheel, etc., that tell you when you need to grab hold of the steering wheel again, but it works really well, and for a mile cruncher I think it's a really important option to get. So I really like this car. You guys know I have the Taycan Cross Turismo as my main daily. This is now the car that I would consider as a secondary option to that. How would I spec it? I think I'd get rid of all the blue details, maybe a few M Performance parts, and I think I would be happy with this eDrive40 because it's more than fast enough. I like the fact that you've got the nice steering. I like the fact that you've got the playability in the rear and it's not kind of understeering into a hedge. I think that extra 150 kg in the M50 would harm this car's really nice balance that it has at the moment. It's just about handling the weight right. So yeah, I think I would consider one of these. I think an eDrive40 would be the one, and then this would be a really nice car to live with daily, be it in comfort or when you want to have a little bit more fun dynamically. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of RBI. If you did, please do like and most of all subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.